Hey, Larken Rose here, and I'm going to start a new thing here called Statists Say the Darndest Things. I'm going to occasionally take a comment or two from under my various YouTube videos and use it as an example to respond to. Now, I'm not looking for the most outlandish, ridiculous ones. That would be a completely different thing. I want ones that actually represent what a lot of normal statist people think and respond to that. It's just, to me, that's better than looking like I might be doing a straw man by saying statists believe this. I'm going to be quoting people actually saying it. So I invite any of you to post in the comments below this or any video actual quotes of what statists say. And if you're a statist, I invite you to say what you think, and maybe I'll do a response to it. Oh, let me throw in, I'm almost up to 63,000 subscribers on YouTube, and well under 1 in every 1,000 ever donates anything. If each of my subscribers donated literally $1 a year, I'd be set for the whole year. So if you want to donate, including a really little bit, that's perfectly fine and would be much appreciated, and I'm going to put into the description below how to do that. And it may not make much difference to you, but a tiny bit of difference to a whole bunch of you can make a big difference to me being able to make these things, because I post them for free. So diving right into it. Now, I'm not going to mention the names of who the comments are from, because the point is not to pick on that particular individual. It's that these are sentiments and ideas and comments that you'll see from a whole bunch of people, and I'm just going to pick comments that are sort of representative enough to be worth responding to. So this was under my video about the Constitution being an anti-freedom document, that it created a ruling class. And there's a number of things in this one comment that I think are worth responding to, because they're things that come up a lot. So this person starts by saying, anarchism is an unworkable concept. Now, it's sort of funny just to understand what the terms mean. Just to hear that sentence is immediately weird. Anarchism is the idea of not having an authoritarian ruling class, like not having some people that can boss around everybody else. So what he's saying is, we can't have a society in which we don't have some people violently dominating everybody else. Now, he's also saying that about himself. I don't think he's planning on being emperor of the statist society that he wants. So he's literally saying that it doesn't work for him to not have somebody ruling and dominating and robbing him too, as well as everybody else, which is kind of a weird thing to say. But if you understand that anarchism just means don't commit violent aggression, to say that that's unworkable is really weird, because what you're saying is we have to, it's not just saying, oh, some people are going to do the wrong thing. Like, are you opposed to murder? Yeah, but murder's going to happen. That's one thing to say that, I can't make murder not happen, but obviously I advocate zero murder. Well, he is not just saying, well, this is going to happen. He's saying, I have to be against it because it's unworkable, which means if you're against anarchism, you're in favor of having a violent authoritarian ruling class, because apparently he thinks that's workable. So then he goes on and says, anarchism is a great north star by which an enlightened society can navigate, but when the lights go out and the shooting starts, it's human nature to form tribes. Okay, let's do the first half of that first. It's a great north star by which an enlightened society can navigate. So it sounds like he's basically saying, yeah, the principle is good. Don't violently dominate people, self-ownership and non-aggression. It sounds like he sort of thinks those are good guiding principles, but now we're going to throw them out the window and be evil because practicality, and when the lights go out and the shooting starts. I'm not sure why the lights are going out or shooting is starting in his weird hypothetical. But then he gets to this thing that I see so often. He says, when the lights go out and the shooting starts, it's human nature to form tribes. Yeah, it is. Whether you're talking about you and some friends, or a family, or a bunch of people, or a town, or Like, people are tribal, we're societal creatures, and we don't just randomly interact with other people. We have people we normally interact with, and then we interact with people outside of that. So yeah, people are totally tribal, but so many times when people argue this, it's not an argument. It's a statement of something real, and then an unstated flying leap to something completely unrelated. So it's like, well, people are tribal. Yeah, okay. Therefore, we need a parasitic, violent, authoritarian ruling class forcibly dominating, robbing everybody. Like, wait, how did you get from that to that? Yeah, people are tribal. Where was the in-between? And he actually says it's human nature to form tribes. The best you can do is to form a better tribe. Better than who? That was and is the purpose of the Constitution. No, it isn't. It doesn't even pretend to be. The Constitution didn't form a tribe. It created a ruling class to violently dominate you and everybody else on half a continent. That's not making a tribe. But so often you'll see statists do this flying leap of logic, and they don't just do it about tribes. It's like, well, ideally maybe we would have no government, but I think, we need some form of organization. Like, yeah, we do. And there's going to be this unstated flying leap from let's be organized to some of us have to violently dominate everybody else. Like, how do you get from A to B? Or, well, you need some structure and you need cooperation. Yeah, and therefore, violent domination by a parasitic ruling class. They don't even state the logic in between because there is none. They just pretend that having a tribe or organization or cooperation magically somehow equates to having a ruling class. And the reason they argue that is because they are so indoctrinated into assuming a government has to exist that they're fishing, and they're not even doing it to be like intentionally dishonest. They're fishing for some vague excuse for why there has to be the thing that they've always believed in. And so they come up with, well, people form tribes. Like, yeah. and I've done this thought experiment with a number of groups where it's like, okay, let's say whether there's 50 or 100 of us in a room or whatever, we're in a shipwreck or a plane crash or something on an island somewhere, and we're it. We may not even know each other. We're all there is now on this island. What are we going to do? How are we going to interact? Nobody, including all the statists, ever suggests statism. They can say, well, we can organize this way, and if this guy knows how to build huts, a bunch of people say, well, I'll help you. I don't know how to build a waterproof hut. I'll help you do it if you show me how, and we can trade stuff. Nobody says, oh gosh, well, we have to pick somebody and give him permission to violently dominate the rest of us. Nobody ever says that. But that is statism. That is government. So you can have a tribe and you can have cooperation and you can have organization, but nobody naturally suggests or wants to be violently dominated. Why the hell would anybody want that? It's only when you grow up indoctrinated into believing that in this particular time and place, it's legitimate and important and necessary and valid for that group of people to dominate you. And that's what the Constitution is. It's this piece of mythology that pretends to create a legitimate ruling class over this giant chunk of land. And the people who believe that mythology have to fabricate excuses for it, including tribal. We're tribal. Okay. And then a flying leap to, and some of us have to violently dominate everybody else. That's not the point of the Constitution. The Constitution created a ruling class. It says there's going to be a House and a Senate, there's a president, there's executive and legislative and judicial branches. Here's the powers they're going to have. They're going to be able to take your money. They're going to be able to regulate certain things. And then the littler ruling classes of the states are going to have most of the power. And it's just a description of another level of authoritarian domination. To pretend that people being tribal automatically means that is insane. And nobody rationally thinks that out and comes to the conclusion. It's an outcome-based argument. And by that I mean they desperately want there to be an excuse for the Constitution and government to be valid when there isn't a rational excuse for that. So they just sort of throw out, well, people are form tribes, or they follow leaders or something, or make up something vague and say that's what the Constitution is, as if the Constitution made a tribe. No, it made a ruling class over a bunch of people who were already here. Like, were they any more of a tribe after a bunch of parasites said, we get to rob all of you? Oh, thank goodness. Now we can be a tribe. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been a tribe for some reason. It's ridiculous. But the thing is, this person and all the people who make similar arguments, is not that he thought this out and decided that was the conclusion. This is after the fact attempt to hang on to his belief in the Constitution. Okay. Then he says this, which is just astonishing. The fact that the U.S. is the most free and most prosperous society in the history of the planet attests to that. First of all, it's bad logic. Doesn't mean it made a tribe. Also, this ranks up there with the indoctrination of the people of North Korea. When Americans say, this is the most free society that has ever been, that's ridiculous. The U.S. isn't even the most free country right now in the world, by any measure. It's not even in the top dozen, whether you're measuring it economic freedom or social freedom. Any way you want to measure it, the U.S. is not the most free. Sorry. But way beyond that, to pretend it's the most free in history, which he says, is absolutely absurd. The people here were way more free as colonists of King George by a huge margin. And it's only with perpetual indoctrination that anybody still pretends this is the land of the free. No, it isn't by any measure of that. It's utterly insane that Americans still call this the land of the free. It isn't. And it's one of those things that you have to hear repeated over and over again and bashed into your head until you mindlessly repeat it like a parrot. Because if you look at it and go, wait, I can't really do anything without it being monitored and regulated and legislated and taxed and intruded on by every level of government in every single way. To pretend this is a free country is ridiculous. Well, there isn't even such thing as a free country. But to pretend this is the freest any society has been is literally delusional. It's not. It's the least free this society has ever been since the revolution. Literally, it's been downhill since then. And there's been ups and downs. Like, there was the end of slavery, so there were a whole bunch of people who, they were really dang not free until that evil institution fell apart. And no, that wasn't because Lincoln saved the day. But that's another topic. But when somebody says, the Constitution makes us the freest country, but we're not. But you have to just hallucinate freedom where it doesn't exist. Otherwise, you have to admit this country isn't special and isn't the greatest. It's not even as good as it was. It's not even as free as it was 50 years ago and 100 years ago. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. Government has gotten more and more tentacles into everything. And there are some ways in which, some things are more free, but overall, to pretend this is the most free and society in the history of the planet is just ridiculous. It's delusional. It's like what the North Koreans say about, we're the greatest and most awesome. Never mind that we can't have electric lights in most of the country. And our leader is so awesome that he doesn't poop. Just that level of delusion is worse than Americans have, but kind of in principle, it's basically the same thing when Americans go land of the free. No, it isn't. But they don't want to ask the question, are we actually free here? Because to ask the question is to doubt the mythology that they were indoctrinated into. And then they'd have to realize, wow, we're not the most free even now. And we're way less free than this place was 100 years ago, by a massive margin. In fact, I would say that thanks to technology enabling tyrants to spy on and control people better, this country is now less free than almost any country in the world was 100 years ago. So even in most of the oppressive regimes, they might kill you for, bad-mouthing government, which is pretty bad. But as far as people's day-to-day lives, the United States of America, land of the free, is less free than almost anywhere on earth was 100 years ago, mainly because the technology didn't exist for government to have its tentacles in everybody's lives. So, like in Nazi Germany, the day-to-day lives of most people in Nazi Germany were way freer than Americans are now. There were a gazillion things they could do without asking government permission, without getting a permit, without paying a tax, without filling out a form. There were a ton of things they could do on a daily basis that Americans can't without breaking the law. So, no, we're literally in many ways less free than Nazi Germany was. Yeehaw. So put that in your status pipe and smoke it. So he goes on and says, our problems today are directly proportionate to the degree to which we have abandoned the principles outlined in the Constitution in the first place. Now, if he had said the Declaration of Independence, I would almost agree. But he didn't. He said the Constitution. Now, again, this is one of those things that people who believe in the Constitution always say, well, it wasn't done right, which is exactly what communists say. Every single time a democratically elected constitutional republic was tried, it turned into a big authoritarian monster, but that's because it wasn't done right. Like, the idea was awesome. It failed horribly when applied to the real world every single time. In fact, the best attempt ever at limited government at a national level, the U.S. Constitution, resulted in the most powerful authoritarian empire the world has ever known, with the most powerful and violent standing army the world has ever known, and the biggest, most intrusive extortion racket the world has ever known, as a direct result of the powers supposedly created by the Constitution and the government supposedly created by the Constitution. So the people who say, oh, well, we didn't do it right, you literally have to argue the solution to this is to do, again, exactly the thing that led us exactly here. And they'll say, well, we have to be on our guard. You mean exactly what all the founders said? Well, we have to be ever vigilant. You mean exactly what they said at the time? Well, we just have to be careful and make sure. You mean exactly what they said? We have to make sure we're not voting for. You mean exactly what they said? And so I've never gotten a straight answer from any constitutionalist why the hell they think that trying the same thing again would have a better result this time around. Why would it not result in exactly what we have now? Or worse, because they have technology to do worse stuff. So it's not even that they say, well, we have to do this fundamentally different. They're literally saying we have to start in the exact same place with the exact same plan and then stick to it. Well, why didn't they the first time? And why would they the second time? And they don't know, because it's literally just a psychological attachment to some mythology that they don't want to let go of. The Constitution is authoritarian crap, and was from day one. And the Anti-Federalists predicted all the things that would go horribly wrong, and they were right. So the idea that it was a good idea, if it was a good idea, why were there some people who already could look at that good idea and could say exactly where it was going to lead? Not just what it described, but the ways in which it wouldn't stay as limited as what they described. Patrick Henry just said, this federal taxing power, you don't want to give that to a federal government because soon it's going to be robbing even more than the states. You're going to have tax collectors all over the place robbing people blind, and there's nothing you can do about it. And the Federalists pushing the Constitution said, no, that'll never happen. Well, it totally happened. And Patrick Henry said, if you set things up like this, where you have a military that answers to a president, he's going to get ambitious, he's going to be a warmonger, he's going to be starting wars all over the place. Federalists were like, no, that's never going to happen. It totally happened. So why is it that this idea that was great in principle, the critics knew exactly where it was going to go and what was going to happen, and then it did, but your solution is to do it again. Do the same thing again, is expecting a different response. So then he says, the Constitution was not designed to protect freedom. I agree. It created a ruling class. It's a little weird that did he try to say that? It was a document that sought to provide a pragmatic solution to a problem posed by human nature while recognizing individual rights. No constitution ever recognizes individual rights. All of them pretend to. And by the way, there's a Bill of Rights in North Korea. There was a Bill of Rights in the Soviet Union, in Red China. They all had the list of individual rights. They all had their version of a Bill of Rights. Didn't do any good, but they all listed them. But you cannot recognize individual rights while you're saying that somebody has the right to rule you. You have the right to be free. By the way, I have the right to steal your stuff. But you have the right to be free. Like Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes. You cannot pretend to give someone the right to steal from everybody else while recognizing their individual rights. But the main thing worth harping on here is that he says it's a pragmatic solution to a problem posed by human nature. Now, this is where statism gets the most ridiculous. For a couple reasons, and I've pointed this out a million times, that if you're saying, well, human nature makes this a problem, if you have a bunch of people and they're all just sort of interacting and free and there's no ruling class, some of them are going to do bad stuff. Okay, I agree. Some will be short-sighted, some will be malicious. Yeah, I agree. So what we need to do to make up for the fallibility of humanity is to take some of those fallible, greedy, potentially nasty people and give them societal permission to violently dominate the rest of us. That will be a pragmatic solution to a problem posed by human nature. Think about how insane that is. Instead of just spouting back the indoctrination, think about how insane that is. You're literally saying, well, there's all these people and I don't necessarily trust them. Okay, me neither. Some of them can be potentially stupid or violent or nasty. Yep, I agree. But what's going to make it better is to give some of them permission to be violent and nasty. That'll fix the problem. That's literally insane. And nobody would ever come to that conclusion if they weren't indoctrinated into it and then trying to fabricate excuses for what they were indoctrinated into taking on faith. Because it's utterly insane to say that. Like, imagine we're on the island. It's like, I'm not sure I know all of you or trust all of you. So, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You, and you now have permission to violently rob and attack and control the rest of us. There, I feel much better. That is the argument for statism. It's that insane to pretend that things will be better if some people have permission to exert violent aggression against everybody else. Because that's all government adds to society. It doesn't add the tribe. It doesn't add organization. It doesn't add cooperation. It adds violent aggression and pretends to legitimize it when certain people do it. So literally to add government to try to make up for people being short-sighted and whatever, all you're doing is adding immoral, violent aggression, and to pretend that that's a pragmatic solution to a problem posed by human nature is literally insane. And this is a fine demonstration of how statism is not a belief that anybody came to by like considering things carefully and working. They were indoctrinated into it, and then after the fact, they fabricate these weird, lame excuses for it, which I did too when I was a statist. But I have to end on the point that, you know, I've beat this dead horse till it rotted and was dust. How insane is it to say that because we're scared that some people might rob us or terrorize us or assault us or commit murder, we definitely need to have the institution which has robbed more people, assaulted more people, terrorized more people, and murdered more people than literally everything else in the world combined. All the private individuals combined, their theft, their thuggery, all the bad things ever done, pale in comparison to the immoral violence committed by government. But we need the thing that commits that immoral violence and aggression more often than anyone or anything else ever has. We need it to exist, because otherwise people might commit immoral violence and aggression. That's literally the argument for statism, and it's literally insane to say we need the thing that does all these horrible things more than anything else ever has in order to prevent all these horrible things. And that is the argument for government. And it's ridiculous. And I'm going to keep pointing out how ridiculous it is. And I'll at least point out that when I believed it, it was still ridiculous 26 years ago. when I still tried to pretend, well, we need a government that makes sure and the response may be, well, no, we need a government that doesn't do all that nasty stuff. So we need an institution to do something that it has never done anywhere in the world at any point in history, at any time, with any group of people, which is refrain from committing violent aggression. But we need the organization that has never done that and has always done the exact opposite. We need that to exist to protect us from the people who would do what that institution has done every single time it has ever been tried at any time in history, anywhere in the world. When you realize the insanity of that argument, that's when you give up statism. Until then, you keep spouting self-contradictory, weird mythology excuses for something that is ridiculous, but you were taught to believe it. And it's difficult to emotionally let go of something that has become such a deeply held faith in your mind that you can't look at it rationally. Because when you do look at statism rationally, you realize there's nothing rational or moral about it. And every excuse for governments, including constitutions, including the US Constitution, is 100% anti-freedom and anti-human and immoral and destructive.